scary as hell. Thank you. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, March 10th meeting of the Coastside County Water District. Joanne, roll call in case any of us took off.
Yes, Director Larmer.
Here.
Vice President Reynolds. Yep. Director Coverdale.
Present.
Director Feldman.
Here.
President Michelson.
Here. Pledge of allegiance, please. All right. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Okay. Oh, looks like we dodged that public comment bullet.
Really? How'd we do that?
Seeing no one here, we will move on to consent
Sean's
calendar.
here. He's a member of the general public.
He's going to complain about the water. Moving on to consent calendar, and Director Lermer did the claims. They appear to be in order.
Yeah, they're fine.
I move we accept the consent calendar as presented.
As a whole, okay.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Joanne, please.
Yes, Director Larmer.
Yes.
Vice President Reynolds.
Yes.
Director Coverdale.
Yes.
Director Feldman.
Yes.
President Michelson.
Yes, thank you. Meetings attended, director comments.
I did some snow research in the High Sierra.
How is it?
I got to tell you that it isn't as deep as we'd like to have it, but they're doing a great job grooming it. So it's extremely useful in its current condition. I don't know that it's going to provide the drinking water that we all need, but I can tell you it's providing a lot of fun this winter. Or the spring, I should say. Right?
Thank you. So moving on to general business, this is our favorite time of year. And Mary, please.
Well, it's our favorite time of year every 2 years now.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to welcome back Sanjay Gar from Raftellus. He's Vice President at Raftellus. He was here a couple years ago and conducted a cost of service analysis and rate study for us. And his cost of service analysis served as, the basis, for our rates. And with that cost of service analysis, we complied with the Prop 218 requirements. He has come back to and is helping us. He will be preparing an updated study based upon the 2018 plan. We asked him to spend his efforts on creating a financial plan, as we look at our rates for the next 2 years. So with that, I'll invite Sanjay up, and here I have his presentation that we're passing around. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. President, board members, staff, and public. I'd like to present our presentation associated with the financial plan and the rate update. As Mary mentioned, we conducted a comprehensive cost of service analysis, which basically looked at your cost structure, looked at your customer profile of consumption. Mary did too, to make sure that our rates are reasonable and justifiable. We have that administrative record. Today, what we're really looking at is a financial plan where we're looking at the next 5 years. We're only going to adopt 2 years of rates, but the next 5 years, what do we see the future holds for the district? As we know, when we develop financial models, there's a lot of uncertainties. We have assumptions. We work with Mary about all those different assumptions. I'm going to be talking about those assumptions. We call them financial inputs, and your policies that you have associated with your reserves, why those are important, and then we'll go into the financial plan. Before I get into the details, I just want to make sure we all know we developed an Excel model. It's non-proprietary. Mary has a copy of the model. It's actually right there on your computer. So, and I think Mary might have presented the model to some of you already. So you already have a copy of it. We're here just to help you facilitate this discussion. And Mary can definitely use this to update for future references if she likes. What we're going to do is based on the rates that you adopted last time, we'll just do a percentage increase across the board. So we'll utilize the cost of service analysis that you've done, which should be updated ideally in 5 years. You can go up to 10 years. That's board's discretion. Pat will most likely have some comments about that too, but the best practice is 5 years. So we'll look at that. So we're going to start with the financial plans. Now, one of the things I do want to bring up is the schedule. We do have a bit of an aggressive schedule associated with this financial study, so my apologies, but it is aggressive. So we are looking for direction today. So I'm going to go through this, and then I'm hoping to get some clear direction, because once you give me that direction, then we're going to write a report. That report needs to be done. I know Pat would like to review it, staff would like to review it, and we need to finalize that within a month, then send the Prop 218 notice out. We want that report readily available, so if the public have questions, they can ask for it. Then we would have the Prop 218, and then we have the public hearing. So unfortunately, because of the Prop 218 process, we're sort of on an aggressive schedule. So the financial inputs, so, you know, some of you who may own a business, what we do is we look at the revenues. We look at the rate revenues, non-operating revenues. You have some property tax. We take into account growth, not much occurring, of course, in your community. Then we look at expenses. We look at the budget. We escalate the budget. We look at supply costs. We actually do look at the different sources of supply, because that's an important component of your cost structure. SFPUC, your local supply. We forecast out. SFPUC have given us some estimates on their increase, so we take that into account. The budget, capital, CIP. You have some debt already on the books. From my lay person or expert in this area, I would say you have quite a bit of debt. I mean, debt's good in some sense, intergenerational equity, interest rates are low, there's a lot of benefits associated with it, but sometimes you can get into challenges, especially if there's a drought. Because as we know, when we cut back, we have to meet our coverage ratio requirement, and sometimes that can be problematic in certain circumstances. So you have quite a bit of debt relative to your O&M budget. I wouldn't say it's...
I want to thank you for highlighting that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, please continue to highlight that.
Okay.
I'm absolutely opposed to taking on more debt, and I really, my personal opinion, I value yours.
And this is a policy, right? So I provide technical, and then policy, that's your discretion. And there's pros and cons with that. I mean, it's hard for if someone says interest rates are all-time low, they're going to get lower. That's a fact. I mean, you can't argue against that. So, but these are decisions that you have to make, and this is a balancing act. Financial policies, we'll go over your reserve policy, and then of course, if you issue debt, you have coverage ratio. So based on all this information, then we look at an increase in revenue adjustments, which we're going to be talking about. So the financial inputs associated with it. The first thing we want to do is look at sales, and we want to understand what do we think sales will be in the future. As we know, after the 2015 historical drought occurred, we were hoping that a rebound would occur. That didn't really materialize. A slight increase occurred, and it's been levelized after that. So we're just assuming that demand is pretty much the same. Actually, we do assume a small reduction in fiscal year 2021, as you 1.3%. But we have the sales, we have the revenues based on those sales. So we do actually a P times Q. We look at the revenues, the quantities and the tiers, multiply by your rates. You have other sources of revenue, so that's great. You have some property tax, as I mentioned. Basically, no growth is occurring, as we know. We're pretty much built out in your community. We also take into account your different sources of supply. So you do have some local supplies. I'll call it local. You have SFPUCs, 35-65% split. I know Mary is a little bit concerned about that split just because of the very dry winter that we've experienced in Northern California. From my understanding, last time it rained did it rain yesterday or no?
It did rain.
Okay.
Sunday.
It was measured in the hundreds.
Okay, hundreds. Okay, so I heard the longest since January 26th, right? Till
37 days.
Yeah, so I mean, whether you count that one or not, I don't know. But it's been very dry, and that's a concern, right? So we have this situation here. So we have the source of supply. We're assuming that mix is staying the same. So the good thing is we're only looking at 2 years of adoption. So I don't think it's going to be a dramatic shift over those 2 years, but we have that. We take into account the cost of SFPUC water. They have given us information associated with an increase in 2023 of $3.97. So we have that built into the model, and then we're assuming that increasing by 7.2%.
How accurate, can you look back at what San Francisco has projected their increases historically and what they've actually been to see how accurate, when they say, oh, it's going to go up 3%, how accurate is that? Is that
I haven't looked at that.
20%?
If, I may say, probably before, 5 years ago, it wasn't necessarily accurate.
That's what I remember.
But
There's a real
they've,
moving target,
they've
yeah.
they've changed their perspective. We have this balancing account. So right now, that's not scheduled to be, to be used up until 2023. And then what they're doing at the, initially, last year, they showed us a chart where they were going to increase us 15% in 2023, and then they were going to drop down to a lower number and then back up. So they've smoothed over the increases to be between 7 and 7.5% over the 3 years. So it all comes up to what happens in this balancing account, because the balancing account's left over what rates we've paid all the customers have paid, the wholesale customers have paid in versus the costs. So I know I can't give you much of a,
I think one of the
More-
challenges, they've
yeah.
issued so much debt
yeah.
in the last few years.
And that's new to them to have that much debt,
No.
right?
Well, in
yeah,
the last
actually-
10 years,
Yeah, actually, well, with WISP,
Yeah,
the WISP was a major part. Actually, their major, SFPC's major costs are, it's really debt.
Right.
So what we're getting, so.
Yeah. And so then if interest rates were to go up, then they'd be having to charge us more money because they own, or is that all in bonds where it's a
I think
fixed
it's
interest?
in bonds. They did refinance a couple of years ago, and that's one of the reasons we have, we haven't had some of the rate increases that we had.
Okay.
And you had some benefits in the balancing account.
Okay, thanks.
and if the board, and today we're only doing 2 years, but in the future, if the board decides, hey, maybe we should do 3 years or 4 years, then I would recommend definitely do a pass-through mechanism to deal with that volatility. But since we're only doing 2 years, I don't think we need that
Okay.
mechanism in place. There's some pros, and we can talk about pass-throughs at another time, but there's some pros and cons with pass-throughs. Some people like it, it's like debt. Some
Yeah.
people like it, some people don't.
Okay.
We have the purchase water cost, we have your O&M costs, we have that increasing. And then as you can see, we have the percentage increase, and that average is 4%. So all else equal, if we're just going to try to keep the status quo and keep enough revenues to cover O&M costs by itself, we would need to just do a 4% increase, just to keep that net income the same level each year.
Where does PG&E fit into this?
That would be in your O&M.
O&M. We included 5% for PG&E,
Okay.
but as we know, that could vary.
Did we miss the slide? Or was I sleeping? Water supply mix.
We talked about, but we can go back to it if you
No,
like.
okay, I didn't remember going 35% and 65. We must have gone over that fast.
He slid through.
Fine, I got it. okay.
We also have debt, those are 3 different types of debt. It's basically $1.9 million. There's a refund that occurred for the 206B bond in fiscal year 2020. As I mentioned earlier on, I just look at the amount of debt and your O&M budget and just see those ratios. And I've seen this happen in other smaller districts where they sort of issued a lot of debt, and then the drought occurred, and then they had challenges with the coverage ratio. So there's some, again, and you can get into a really not interesting, but an unfortunate situation where you have money in the bank, you have reserves, but because you're not meeting your coverage ratio, you have to increase rates significantly, even though you have money in the bank, because coverage ratio is basically net income. It's a flow. And it's an unfortunate situation some agencies had, because they could just use the reserves for those temporary 1 time or 2 times, but they couldn't. We have the CIP expenditure that we're planning in the future, right over here, and we inflate it because those are future expenditures. We're using a 3.2% increase associated with that. Average CIP is $5.4 million for the next 5 years. I know there's a lot, Mary and I have talked a lot about this, there's a lot of uncertainty about CIP expenditure. What's the district capable of doing? what do we really need to do? There's a lot of uncertainties about that, and I don't know if you want to talk more about that, Mary, or is...
Well, I think, the one thing, we have some unknowns right now in terms of projects that we, and certainly with our, two big projects, our Nunes treatment plant. And, right now, we're going through a study to understand those numbers. We're also looking at our tanks where we need to make some significant improvements on our tanks. But those numbers and the game plan is up in the air. So we put in placeholders and timing that we think is correct, but a lot of it right now is in 2021. Particularly, we're going to be doing a lot of design and studies. So we have uncertainty. The other point with this, when you look at the CIP that we that is included, and we'll talk about next, those are in 2021 dollars. So you're looking at, right now in 2021, if you want to know the difference, it's about, 5.1 million in 2021 dollars average. And because of the model, he's plugging in all the inflationary items, so that's why he's included the inflationary aspects here.
Okay. So reserve policies. So reserves are important to have for a water agency and wastewater agency. And the reason why is because of the liability. So if you look at your CAFR statement, you look at the asset value you have significant amount of assets. And a lot of those assets are underground. We don't know really the condition of those assets because they're underground. And there's a liability associated with that. We also have a cash flow situation where you're paying SFPUC water. By the time someone uses the water, you get the bill maybe 30 days later. They pay the bill another 30 days later. You've been paying SFPUC, you've been paying your staff, so there's a cash flow situation. There's also reserves you need because of CIP expenditure. So when you award a contract, you have to have that money in the bank to award that contract. You're also a special district, you work with the city. There might be situations where the city is going to be tearing down a road. You weren't planning to work on that pipeline necessarily that year. You're going to do that maybe 2 years from now. But since the city's already going to tear down the road, might as well go in there and fix the fix the pipeline, because last thing you want to do is tear the road twice or 3 times over a 3-year period. That's, because as we all know, the citizens, they don't understand the difference between the special district and the city government. They just see it as just government. And so we need to have these reserves. So we're recommending, so we reviewed your current reserve policies and we're saying those are good. Actually, I was suggesting to Mary maybe even increase it, but Mary was like, no, I don't think we have that appetite right now. But 20% of operating O&M is good. Rate stabilization was the one I was suggesting to increase, but Mary said, no, let's leave it alone. And then capital 5 years, that's good to have. And then 1 year of debt, so that's $9 million of reserves. So it's good to have reserves. The other way of looking at reserves is if you draw down on your reserves significantly, there's a risk all of a sudden that could occur. A drought, emergency, something happens where you have to spend a lot of money. And what you'll have to do is increase rates significantly. So by having reserves, you minimize rate fluctuation or rate shocks to your customers. So it's a buffer for your customers. So that's another way of looking at it.
I will say with this also, like in addition to needing money in the bank for our capital, the debt service, we pay most of those payments in the first quarter of the year. So we'd like to have that money in the bank as we start out off the year, because most of those payments are paid for first quarter.
So now let's get into the financial plan. So those are all the major inputs of the model. And the first thing we're going to show you is if we do, and these are dashboards of the model. The model has lots of different graphs, but we're just showing you the main thing, which is the ending balance. And this is the scenario where we don't do any revenue adjustment. So this is, I call it status quo. Some people will say, well, that's never true, Sanjay. We'll never do nothing. We'll always do something. But I need to show a reference point. So if we do nothing, then we have significant problems. We're already below our reserves, and then by 2024, we would be, bankrupt. So some kind of revenue adjustment would need to occur. We would, at least you need to do 4% to meet O&M costs. So we're going to go over 3 scenarios. One is a 4.5 annual increase with debt issuance. And as I mentioned, there's pros and cons with that, and we can talk about that if you like, with the debt issuance. Another one is 7% increase, 100% cash funded. Another one is we can do 6% increase, but then cut knowing that the CIP, we have a challenge with spending all that money, let's just assume that we're going to do only 90% of the expenditure associated with it, and everything's 100% cash funded. So the annual CIP expenditure would be almost $5 million. So I'm going to show you these 3 scenarios. So this is the first scenario. We're going to do 4.5. We do issue debt associated with that. And as you can see, we're above the target of our reserves. We're doing well. But there are challenges with debt issuance. You already have quite a bit of debt on the book. There is an intergenerational argument for issuing debt. Interest rates are low, but it is cost more because no one's going to give you free money. So you still have to pay something for it. So those are pros and cons with that the board has to consider associated with it. Scenario 2 now is basically a 7% increase. By doing that, we do meet the reserve target by 2025. Now, this assumes that we spend all the CIP expenditure each year. So Mary's writing checks, and that money's getting cashed and deposited. That's what we're assuming here. So in reality, we know that that's not going to occur. We know that even if you're awarding the contracts, money will be encumbered because you're not going to write a check for the whole project right up front. So there'll be some encumbrance there. So the ending balances actually will be higher than this, but the money will be encumbered. Okay? If there's any questions, let me know if I'm not making sense. Scenario 3 now is we know that we have challenges with CIP expenditure, and I believe there was a prior board member who had a
Present board member.
Oh, President, I'm sorry. As a saying associated with it. Is it 90% or?
The Feldman factor is about 40%.
It's 40.
40%, okay, so this is a generous.
At least it's a gesture.
A gesture.
In the right direction.
Yeah.
It is institutionalized.
So we're saying we're gonna, it's the Murphy's Law, right? So we're getting better now. So with our, 90% of CIP, so almost 5 million, 6%, and as you can see, we're above the target. Now, the good thing here is we're only looking at 2 years of adjustments. So, you're going to revisit this in 2 years to see how things are playing out. So really, we're talking about 6%. The range is 4.5 to 7. And that's really, and we're not issuing debt today if we do the 4.5, right? That would be the following year. So it's really, that's the range we're looking at. And we can get into the model and look at different scenarios if you like. We can do that. We have the model. But, to me, the way I would suggest you look at it is what's easiest for you, or maybe not easiest, but what do you think is the easiest story to tell to your customers when you see them at the supermarket? And why do you need that? And what would be a good, acceptable answer given the challenges that you have?
Historically, what has our expenditure of capital improvement been?
I'm
How
sorry.
much?
So this
Oh,
assumes,
historically, yeah, so we
scenario
have-
3
yeah.
says that we're
3.6.
gonna
We-
spend 90%.
In
Almost 5.
the last 5 years, our average was 4.1
Million.
million.
He's saying what percent of the total budgeted amount was spent, like 80%, 60%, 70, probably 70 to 80% over the last 5 years, except for this year.
Yeah,
We're going to do very well this year.
in terms of, this year we're spending 6 million. We should, if we get all our projects done.
And we budgeted 5, and our
Yeah,
average
but
is
we-
5.
A
But we
little
didn't
over.
spend 2 million last year. So
Okay.
we're catching up.
Do you have an estimate of percentage of what we
Um,
budgeted versus what we spent over the last 5 years?
I
10
would
years.
say in the 80 to 90%.
Right.
There's something funny about sort of saying, well, we're going to budget this much to build tanks, but we're going to go ahead and bank on only spending,
Yeah.
not doing 10% of it. I'm like, okay, why don't I set my clock 10 minutes fast because I'm always late, so then I'll be right on time. It just, I don't know, it seems weird.
I do think the tanks are going to be very expensive, and
Yeah.
and Nunes. But the big question right now is, we're still, we don't have really good numbers yet on these things. So, and it's going to be 1 to 2 years before we even start thinking about those expenditures. But it is something that, it is, it's a question.
Crazy question, and I realize this is history, but you had what we've spent on capital improvement, and what over like a 5 or 10 or maybe 15 year, what have been our rate increases on sort of a long-term average? I mean, I think I remember us being up in the 8s and looking at down in the 5s. Is there sort of a long-term trend of what our high and our low has been historically? Does anybody know?
Well, 2.9 was the lowest one I remember.
Yeah.
We've been in double digits too.
Yeah, we've
Yeah,
been.
but
we
the
were-
average, you mean, over the last 15 years?
Yeah, well, we were in double digits, I think, a lot of years before 2015. And
Those
then
were
we
the
had-
catch-up years from
Yeah.
many
Yeah,
years of
many.
no increases.
And then we had a really big increase
Right.
in 2015, which was the year of SFPUC increased.
At the front end of the WISP, when the WISP.
Yeah, basically, they came up, I think they had like a 28% increase. So we had I think we averaged 24% that year
Yeah, we had
for an
a-
increase. So then we dropped down, and I don't have the exact numbers, but the last 2 years, we felt like we finally stabilized, and so 2 years ago, we had equivalent 2.9%, but with that year, what we did is we changed the tier structure, so some customers had higher increases and some had lower.
What is 5% compounded for 15 years? The total? Did we have an algorithm there? Computer model?
5% of 15.
5% compounded.
For 15 years, how much is that?
I mean, well,
What percentage would that be?
guesstimating, I would say it's most likely around 90%, if I had to guesstimate. Because we know that, 15 times 5 is 75, right? But there's
Yes,
compound.
Trying to
So
remember,
now
I have it at home, a list of all the rate increases for
Yeah.
the last 15 years. And I was
Where's
just trying to
Gina?
remember the number.
She would know.
Who?
No, Gina
Gina's
would.
out.
Gina would know that, yeah, right.
And so,
I think, I don't know, it's hard to, I would guess that it's in the 4.5% to 5% range
Yeah.
on average over the last 15 years.
At least.
Yeah.
At least
I think it's-
4 to 5.5%.
because I think we had a lot of years, even in between there, we had some
and nines,
9%,
yeah.
8s and 9s,
5 to 6% maybe?
yeah. And,
More in the recent years than in the prior years.
yeah, and more in the recent years, because before that, we were in the double-digit increases, which I can get for the next time.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it is, I guess the other piece, we look, well, yeah. So the big change with what's happened in our CIP budget is really Nunes, which is, before that, that's where, with some of these models, we had, we're looking at, just with Nunes in this 5 years, we're adding 7 million to the CIP budget. So that's where you see the increases.
Think about capital budgets is that. It's your best guesstimate, sitting down in a place and time, looking forward for 5 to 10 years and trying to make some reasonable estimates what's going on. It's really an estimate. And you get numbers that may or may not be within a certain plus or minus percentage of reality. The 10% thing that he proposed, the 10%, 90% of capital, is simply to build in that uncertainty factor. Because over the years, we have seen that it's been somewhat uncertain. We've actually spent less than we planned on many years, even though we thought we were going to do the things we were going to do. We really thought we would meet those objectives. We didn't. We couldn't for the contract availability, for studies. So that's why we thought this was a way to represent that uncertainty and show the public that there is some leverage here, and we're going to try and take that into account based on the fact that in the our historical expertise shows that it happens. That's the reason we do that, not because we're just trying to ignore
But
the,
there's actually another consideration. You want to
Sure.
consider not only how much on average you miss the budget, because apparently we're more likely to be spending less than more.
right.
But this year, we're going to actually spend more, so it's like in this year and next, it's almost a $2 million variance. That's a huge variability. And so we need to take the variance into account as well. And how often have we ever gone over the budget? I mean, how often does that happen? Is that rare?
Once, maybe, I don't know. It was at least, we were close a couple of times.
I don't remember.
I think in the 17, 18, 16, 17, 17, 18 years, we were pretty much right on. May have been a little over, I'd have to get those numbers. I think, last year, we had a number of things that we wanted to get in the pipeline, and we didn't, and so last year, we were 2 million short. So that's where we've made it up this year.
However, we were in the position because of the reserves we managed to put together
Yeah.
to be able to handle it, which is one of the reasons we have been doing the things we've been doing all these years in terms of reserve generation and increasing rates over time. One of the historical things, of course, is the year before last, we had 2.9 plus a rate structure revision. Then we went to 4. One of the things we saw this year is that if we go to 7, I mean, we met at the Finance Committee, we were discussing this, so we can share some of our thoughts with you. I mean, what it's worth. To go look at 7% for next 5 years seemed pretty interesting in terms of what we would present to the public. And looking at options to that with some reasonable expectation of gathering capital reserves, but not doing something that really caught people's attention, was that we looked at the 6% with the 10% variance in capital and no debt. Now, a number of people here don't seem to care for debt very much, and so we're trying to take that into account too. But if you do that, of course, you can charge a lower rate. But we don't feel like we want to do that, and I think at the Finance Committee, it was our impression that that would not be the way we want to go. We could always go there if we want to in the future, if in fact these numbers for the next 2 years don't look good compared to what we find out when we know more data. So I don't know, what we came up with, I think, option 3. We did it a little differently, though. We said we might like to consider 5% the first year and 6 thereafter, to gradually go from 4 to 5 and then to 6, to give the public some chance of seeing that things were changing, and we're trying to do it in a little bit of a staged manner. And having the 10% offset on the capital helped us to do that. And we still come out okay, because if you look at that picture, which is 4, 5, 6, 6, 6, 10% and no debt, you get to see we still have a pretty solid reserve at the end of the 5 years. It's not on there. It doesn't show
Right.
it. It's up here.
So when Sanjay asked for feedback, and it sounds like the board feels pretty strongly scenario 1 is not something people are enthusiastic about. So I think we can scrap, it'd be Chris to call it, but I think we can scrap 1.
Okay.
You okay with
Debt,
that?
no way.
Okay.
Okay?
Is everybody okay with that? So there's some feedback.
so it's between-
Yeah, he
Not
needs
your
one
good-
more feedback,
So
I
it's
believe.
between 2 and 3 then.
Or
There's
some,
Yeah,
He
and
needs, I think,
Yeah.
feedback to numbers level. what
correct,
you-
exactly, because we're going to write a
In order to do
report.
his report, I believe the Finance Committee understands,
Yeah.
he has to have 5 percentages, the 10% or no 10%, and no debt. Basically, that's it. I mean, and, that's and the numbers, what are those 5 percentages with or without the 10%?
I feel like the current climate of where we're at for a whole swirl of things, be it politics, coronavirus, could be potential drought. I'm feeling like planning to increase reserves makes a lot of sense, because we can always slow down on increases, but boy, if something comes untoward towards us, I think our reserves should be reasonable, and that would be my take.
I couldn't agree more. And are you with the 7?
I'm kind of with the 7.
Yes, so am I. I want to get those reserves up sooner rather than later. There are a lot of unknowns looming out there. But along with those unknowns, there are always, a silver lining comes along with that. Construction costs may really come down.
But this is, so when we look at scenario 2 is 7%, next year our reserve is only 7.6.
Yeah, but that's assuming, what we don't have in front of us is a 7 with 90% of CIP. That would
Got
make a
it, okay.
huge difference.
Yeah, that's the
Mary
2.5.
Mary can make that right
Yep.
now.
So you can do it right now.
Watch this,
Okay.
Yeah.
watch this. Well, I'd like to voice in on that if I could.
No,
So,
unless you
okay,
agree.
I don't agree. So one of the thoughts that I had is probably the people that are going to be most impacted by the change in the economy, if in fact we're going to experience what it looks like we're going to experience, are the people that are really at the bottom of the pecking order. And they're the people that are going to be really impacted. And my feeling was that we could do it going 5, 6, 6, 6, 6, for example, and step them up slowly. Because there really could be a lot of people out of work. I mean, you know, if demand goes down and we can't get manufactured goods, you know, imported from the rest of the world, it's very possible a lot of people are going to be out of work. And I would hate to cause those people to suffer lack of water. That would bother me. And I don't think it puts the district in any risk at all, because the original goal we had for reserves was 6 million, and we've exceeded that. And the plan that we're looking at will exceed that. And what we felt comfortable about, there's so much variability in the newness and when we stage those expenditures. And also the tanks, they're huge decisions that we haven't really had a chance to talk about, and those are big numbers in this 5-year period. And what we felt was, we're not really at risk right now because we can't spend that money quickly anyway. And if we had to get into an emergency, we could borrow. We don't want to borrow, but we have the capacity. And so if it was really a crisis or really scary, and we felt, man, that newness thing has to be repaired right now, and we got a contractor that can do it in 6 months, which you know isn't going to happen, right? We could plug in some cash and work on that basis. So that was my thinking, was more about who's going to be impacted the most by the rate increase.
I mean, looking at the 5-year with 7 all the way with the 10%, you've got 12 million at the end. I mean,
But Ken, I don't
that's-
understand how, are you assuming that people who are more likely to be impacted are also going to be less likely to use a lot of water? Is that what you're assuming?
No, what I'm assuming is that they're going to be the most impacted by a rate increase.
That could be anybody on the tier structure. It doesn't mean,
well,
it doesn't.
all people would be somewhat served by
Yeah.
this, that's what it.
Yeah, well, everyone will be
It goes
hurt.
across the board, as if in
Everyone
fact is.
could potentially be hurt.
I mean, you could have a large family and have to use a lot of water, and you could be with a small family and very well off
Could you-
and wouldn't have any impact at all.
Could you do the 5, 6, 6, 6?
So you're not proposing a
And-
rate structure change, you're proposing?
Yeah,
Oh,
the
just the rates
this is
itself.
just rates.
Just
Right.
starting at 5%.
Do
as
5,
opposed
6,
to
6,
jumping to
Oh,
7
look at that.
right away, which is a considerable jump in our rates, I think, 7%.
We also have to understand too, over the last few years, that our reserves have been growing faster than we had projected, actually.
Well-
We are very good at cost savings and spending less and using more Denniston, and we have done very well, and we've actually done better than we ever projected in our previous years. So that's why, is this the 5, 6, 6, 6?
So you're,
Yeah, but do you want 90% or 100%?
90.
so then you're
Try 90.
proposing essentially a modified scenario 1, where the modifications are a higher percentage of.
Modified scenario 3.
Yeah, modified 3.
This counts on debt, number 1.
Yeah, okay.
No, we don't have
We're
that.
getting rid of the debt.
Modified scenario 3.
So it's 3 at 5% instead of at 6.
No, 5, 6, 6, 6. 5 the first year,
Oh.
6 the second.
Got it, okay.
6 thereafter. Right, this one here, she just put it up.
Yeah.
It's up on the board, you
Yeah,
can't.
the lower right-hand corner.
Right,
Kinda
instead of
shows you.
hitting it one big jump, it's,
Yeah,
it
so
was.
that's just.
We're here, we'd be at 10 no
Mirrors.
in 5 years, at 5, 6, 6, 6, and 10% of capital expenditure.
90%.
90%.
Yeah.
But every time we do these feel-good
No, it's not feel good.
exercises in the 21 years that I've been here.
Yeah.
We try and keep it down, and I understand all the rationale for keeping it down. We find ourselves continually in playing the catch-up game.
But essentially, we've caught up well. That's
Yeah,
the point. No, we've done
have-
well.
We have, and I really want us to, I like being caught up. I like having reserves, and I want to continue to stay caught up because we have some really big expenses looming out there. The tank, those tanks were on no one's radar a couple of years ago. This is, maybe even this year, this is new. And we don't even, what's the ballpark number for those tanks? I mean, let's let the public know, that we're not just putting this in our, what's the ballpark for replacing the Carter Hill tanks?
It was, what was it?
$2 a gallon.
How many million gallons?
8.5.
How many millions have we got out there in
8.5.
unrepaired tanks?
So we're talking about raising rates because we have the need to replace tanks in the neighborhood of $8 million. So this money is going to replace infrastructure that serves our entire community, and it needs to be paid for somehow. And we're not getting.
That's in the plan though, right? That's in the facilities plan, the capital plan. It's shown
We
at
could have
the
placeholders,
at the
yeah.
rate at which we could do it. Because you can't do it all at once anyway. I mean, it's gonna be phased over a number of years.
Yeah.
You can't do it all at once. You're gonna 8 million at so much per year, which is the way the capital plan was developed, I believe. I wasn't on the committee, but, so that's provided for in that 5.42 mil. That's all I'm trying to say. I know, I hear you.
Yeah, no,
I
yeah,
hear you.
we have
Something
legitimate
just
expenses,
seems-
so I understand, that we're arguing over 1 or 2%, but, the compounding over the, 21 years, the tough, I'll make the tough votes. I know some directors historically, and some still here, really won't make those tough votes. But that 1 or 2% that you dial it down over the 21 years that I've been sitting here is a huge compounding effect, and which kind of keeps us behind the 8 ball. So these are tough decisions that we have to make, but we have an infrastructure that we are empowered to maintain, and that's what we're supposed to do.
I'll propose 6.5%.
Yeah, I would go with that, but I'm not, there's no way, I personally, I'm not gonna go 4 or 5.
No, we didn't ask
for
for
feel
4 or
good. I mean, even 5,
Hey, I'm the feel-good guy.
yeah, because I've been
I'm
sitting
the
here long
feel-good guy
enough,
who
and I
went for the 4s
understand.
and the 4.5. I'm not even doing that this time. I'm
Yeah, and you are the
acquiescing.
cheap,
No.
because when I was, when
sorry.
Jim and I were elected, we had to do
some
some really
concurrence.
heavy lifting.
We had some concurrence
Because
on the
the prior
finance
boards,
committee.
wanted to feel good and sing Kumbaya and didn't want to raise rates.
Have we been hurt by the feel-good approach to this point in your view? Have we not been able to meet our objectives
Oh,
up
we
to this
have,
point?
and
we've done it
that's our
very
job,
well,
and I
feel
wanna-
good or
And I
no.
want to continue to do it.
Well,
I want to continue to do it.
He was on the finance committee, and we both had the same sense of things. So I'm not the only feel-good guy, and Ken is usually not a feel-good guy.
I'm not being a feel-good guy. I want to make something really clear. We have some big expenses coming our way.
Right.
But they are not going to occur in this first year. They're not going to occur probably in the second year. And so we're factoring in the idea that we've got to come up with a lot of money. And what's really interesting about this particular proposal is we come up with it. We come up with the money that we
You
need.
gotta lift it, you gotta lift it.
Now, if you feel better about, bouncing to 7 and jumping around at 7, I mean, there are arguments for that.
Sure.
And I agree with that. But we didn't do it based on fuzzy-wuzzy.
Right.
We did it based on careful financial analysis with our consultant and with the general manager and with our superintendent who's out on the firing
You
line.
want to change it?
So we've been around the block on this stuff in the real numbers.
Yeah.
In the dirty.
What I did hear
dirty
is,
numbers.
well, if it's not enough, we can always borrow.
No,
I don't want to hear it.
if in the
borrow.
first year, we have more data that shows that going forward, things are going to be, what's the word? More understandable, we have a chance to then modify the future budget.
Which modify is code for a catch-up.
Well, no, increasing rates as required. I mean, it's like everything else.
But it would be playing catch-up, and that's my fear. I don't want to be 2-3 years from now playing catch-up for having not done that.
No, I understand.
heavy
I don't
lifting
think
this
we've,
year.
Yeah, no, I agree with Chris on this.
I
Oh.
understand.
I think we,
I love it. Thank
Oh,
you.
kumbaya. There's hope.
I mean, we don't want to dig a hole that's going to be hard to dig out of, and
Yes.
so maybe we should be playing around with sort of graduated rates where, you know, the one year we down a little bit, the next year we're up a little bit so that it averages out. You can't really do that because because it accrues, but
You can't do that.
but we could, you know, do some kind of compromise in between.
Wide open to hear it. Well, I mean, you know, pick your numbers.
But anyway, you're going to give us.
But we gotta tell
No, he
him.
needs us to
No, I
tell
need
him.
you to tell me.
He needs us to
This is
tell
a
him
board
what he
policy.
thinks. I mean, what we think, and then Mary, what Mary's opinion on this. We had talked in the finance committee about this in some detail. Mary seemed that
Yeah.
having to run this business and knowing all the ins and outs and the uncertainties, to feel like our settled on at least option 3 version made her comfortable, and she felt that that could be workable. Now, if she doesn't feel that now, then I want to know that, that's
I mean,
fine.
My big issue right now is our CIP is really squirrely. I mean, we don't have answers right now. We know it's going to be expensive. We know the tanks are going to be expensive. We know the plant's going to be expensive. We don't know the timing. I think we want to make sure that we're covered enough. The one thing is, we're going to be doing mostly studies in the next year. We're not really going to have a good understanding about what we're doing at Nunes really for until the end of next year. We're going to get a basis of design in the next couple months to get more of an understanding of what we could be spending. We're also looking at our tanks to get some placeholders
It's
and
not
find
straight.
too. But it is something there's so much uncertainty in our capital right now that we have some opportunity next, in a couple of years to make changes. We could, I know we don't want to borrow, but if we had some extreme thing we had
If
to
you
borrow.
did straight
we could.
6 across the 5 years and 90%,
Yeah.
what does that look like in
that's what
terms
this
of
is.
end reserve? What
So
does that
what-
look?
If we did have to borrow, what kind of
That's not-
rates could we expect
I
to get?
mean, I don't know, I'd go 6 if I had.
Right now, the rates are really low.
What's really low?
So we refunded our 2006 bond issue for 2.85%
Probably
interest.
So that means we're
And
actually-
so we're in the low to mid twos right now.
So we're actually, the inflation's bigger.
Right.
But
So we're actually printing money by doing that.
I think I do think we need, I think we need to be cautious, as Sanjay says.
As alluring as it may be,
But it is something where, because we need to, I think we need a better understanding of our CIP dollars.
And you can always, you can always reevaluate whether you issue debt or not later.
Right.
Right, I mean, that's, you can do the 6% or
We could do that
7%.
without,
Yeah.
next year if we had to, it's not part of.
You could reevaluate just the interest rate, inflation, and see,
You
and,
don't issue it the same year you
Yeah.
play it, you do it the following year usually.
I mean,
It takes a while.
again, you have quite a bit of debt, relative to your O and M, and that's what you want to look at, because the challenge is, if rates fall, if you had a significant drought, and we can do that analysis in here, where, what would happen if you had a significant drought? How bad would your coverage ratio have to be? Now, you have other sources of revenues, you have property tax, so that helps out with the coverage ratio, but there's a risk there that I just want to make sure we all, sometimes people think debt is a utopia, or drink the Kool-Aid, and I'm not saying it's good. I mean, I have debt on my house, right? When you buy a house, everyone issues debt. You buy a car, you issue debt. Those are things we all do, right?
Well,
It's-
for people my age, to pay for something that's going to
What do you-
last for 50 years, and I'm not,
Yeah.
is, to my mind, not equitable.
Correct, intergenerational.
But there's other costs as well.
Correct.
And, there's one
Because-
thing to be said. I mean, when we make our 218 notice, we can say that it will be no higher than. So it can be approved at 7 across the board, and we can come back and say, we changed our minds. we'll have 5 the first year, 6 the second year.
No, 5's not starting.
Well, but I'm just, but,
I we're setting a upper limit, yeah.
yeah, so we still have flexibility, and we're still studying this. We may know more. You know, we're hoping to have more answers. It's not like we're
If you need numbers,
just gonna
right, but we
blindly
could change
solve
it at
it.
the,
If
Final
all of a
hearing,
sudden we
right.
hear that the tanks are more than we've budgeted for, then, you know, maybe the 7% would be more attractive.
Let's go with Ken's suggestion and put out plan our 218, not to exceed 7%.
well, is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, I think it's easy, then you can back off.
Or not.
I think it sets some precedent.
A bad precedent, you don't like that? Okay, well then, so make.
Well, no, I'm hearing everybody, I'm trying, I know we got, I mean, the option, one of the options is to go gradually to that 7 over the next, what happens if you do 6, 6, 7, 7, 7? I'm just trying to get there.
Getting them from 4, 5 to 5.
I think jumping from 4 to 7 is gonna,
You know.
I think it's more than we need.
Back-
I just think it's more than we need based
Another
on the
history lesson
data.
here in order. Every time I've sat here and we have talked, we have drank the Kool-Aid and sing Kumbaya, and we've projected rate increases, they will be this for the next 4 years. We all
Well, we
feel
know it's
really
not
good about
gonna stay the
ourselves.
same.
We have never once,
Yeah, we did last
never
time.
never once met them. 21 years of experience, I can tell you, hasn't happened.
We did pretty good last
We have been
time.
so proud of ourselves, patted ourselves in the back. Oh yeah, it's going to be, you know, we projected rate increase for the next 5 years. We have never once met them. There are too many
Oh,
unknowns
absolutely,
in the
yeah.
world. There are
Absolutely.
too many unknowns.
Absolutely. The next 3 years, we projected at 4, I believe, for the next 3 years, right, so
We have
obviously.
great difficulty projecting next year.
So Mary,
What is-
how
bring it
much
up.
is our revenue varied relative to our capital gains expenses?
Well,
I mean, do we have a steady revenue flow? I mean, if the variance of the revenue is as big as the variance of this capital improvement program, you know, those are double risk factors then.
our risk, we do have a risk with our revenue.
big
And
is
that is, we lost our biggest customer, one of our biggest customers this year.
Basically.
Yeah, but they have, so we took out kind of equivalent to half of their revenue, but that means we have to make it up, and that's where we got to 590 million gallons. We just said, okay, they're gonna make up half, we're gonna,
How often have we had that happen? I mean, this is an unusual circumstance.
it's unusual. I mean, we had it happen, before my time back with Nurserymen's Exchange. We did have, in drought situations, we have had issues. We went down to
500.
560.
We went under, I think.
Six-
Sales?
560 million gallons.
Oh, I thought we went below 500. I thought we got to 490.
No, but it is, but 560 put a lot
Yeah.
of challenges on us, and certainly if we're in a drought situation, we will be looking at those kinds of numbers to make our, to make the budget, and we'll have a decrease in both revenue and.
And the last time, in order to make up for that, the last drought, we really had to raise rates. And then we spent all of our time explaining to people, I'm using less water and you're charging me more. We, in this room, understand how that works. Our customers don't.
Right.
And it's a
But we
difficult
could
explain.
never put that
And I
into our
don't want
rate
to put
structure.
myself in a
What happened?
position where we really, again, have to play that catch-up.
The drought?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but
There's
we
so
can't,
many-
it's hard for us to
so-
predict
so-
droughts and
yeah,
say in
but
2
it's-
years we're gonna have a drought, so we have to raise the rates now to provide.
What I'm
for-
trying to make a point is there are so many variables
Well, no, I
out there
agree.
that we just can't say, oh, it's great, let's make everybody feel happy and good and do 4 or 5%. Well,
No, I
there
don't
are
wanna
some
make
real variables
4 or
out there.
5%. No, no.
Is there any, before I leave the drought idea, is there any way we can mitigate the loss of revenue in a drought by having a drought penalty for people who use more than their?
Oh, we talked about all that stuff. It's really
I
up.
mean, is there a legal option to have a rate system that would say that if everybody has to cut back 20%, and if you, particularly customer A or B, doesn't do that, there's a penalty charge.
That would
on
be
top
a
of it.
separate discussion.
You would need to build that into your rate structure.
Is that a possibility?
It is, something
legal.
like that is a possibility, but it would need to be built into your rate structure.
So, I mean, if we're worried,
So you have to have
if this is if this is a great revenue challenge in terms of variability, maybe the way we ought to address that is to create a rate structure that has an automatic penalty in time of drought.
You
ever heard of it?
Phrase it
Yeah.
differently.
So
The
there's-
concept, I get the concept.
So there's, just to make sure, there's drought rates and drought penalties. So drought rates is a revenue stream to deal with drought conditions, falls under Prop 218, there needs to be a nexus. And what we would do is you would most likely not call it a drought rate, you would call it an emergency rate. There could be a scenario where you don't have a drought, but you have the same
Right.
thing, like an earthquake or a fire or something. And so you have emergency rate, and then you have stages. And that would be in your urban water management plan. You have stages in that right now. I believe the state wants 5 or 10, I can't remember. 6, okay, you have 6. And then each one of those stages, we would model it using this model to see what the net income effect would be, and then we would develop drought rates associated with it. That would have to be in your Prop 218 notice.
I'm prepared to talk to the customers about why rates go up when the.
It is complicated to explain.
Talk to them.
Supposed
Some
to
work.
in front of
Tell 'em, hey,
Safeway.
You use less, we gotta charge more to pay the bills, what can I say?
So a lot
Can
of
you
people.
bring this one up to
Hang
the,
on, Bob, let-
no, it's fine, I'm kidding.
People do drought rates when you do more than like 5 years. When you do 5 years of adoptions and you're not gonna
That-
touch this, then drought rates make a lot of sense. If you're doing every 2 years, I don't know if you would want to do drought. You could do it, but I'm just letting
No,
you
no,
know.
but thanks for answering.
Yeah. And drought penalties that's the speeding ticket.
Right, so that's the wrong term.
Yeah, and
So-
drought penalties is like you did a misdemeanor, you did something wrong, you used water wastefully, but you don't assume that you collect that revenue.
Well, gasoline goes up and down in price.
Correct.
Water could too.
If you put in your Prop
90%.
218 notice somehow, and that's the
Yeah.
challenge. So
And
that's
then
through a
you clearly
pass-through.
define your triggers.
Yeah.
And those are gonna go up. so.
Exactly.
Is that 90%?
No, that's 100.
290. 66777, ahead of time. No, I'm up with you guys now, I'm almost there, I mean, I don't know, Ken's not even happy with that one.
I think they're all great.
They're all great,
I don't
Okay.
see us having a financial
that's,
problem right now.
I
That's
mean,
my personal.
I agree, we haven't. And we've been very good at keeping ahead of
We
it.
sought reserves at $6 million,
And now we're at
and we
9.
exceeded it. We set a goal. Everyone, there was battle over those goals.
Right, and we met
And
it.
we met them,
Right.
and we've exceeded them.
Mhm.
And we've spent money at a faster rate than we've ever spent money.
Right.
So I feel comfortable about that. I'm not comfortable with our challenges. We have challenges,
Mhm.
but we get to review this. We can talk about it in 6 months. We can talk about it in a year. We don't have to set rates for 2 years. We have the right to set rates every year.
Mhm.
So if after 1 year we're unhappy, we could blow this plan off
And get
and
another
write a new
218,
plan,
yeah.
Correct.
do a 218, and have a 20% rate. I mean, we have so many options in front of us that it's not this doom and gloom thing. We got enough coronavirus talk, got enough, economy's tanking talk. We're in good shape. We've done a great job. Is it perfect? Are we safe? Are there any risks? Well, of course, it's life, But I don't see those rates that we're talking about as risky. And I've been studying this and working on this committee for probably way too long.
Right.
I maybe can't even remember the first year I worked on it.
Right.
But we've put this district in good financial condition. We've kept it there year after year for years. So we're not doing this blindly or willy-nilly or, we took fuzzy drugs at lunch. We've analyzed this. And the only downside to where we are, in my opinion,
Is uncertain.
is there are some uncertainties that we're going to find out about. And as we get professional opinions on those uncertainties, we've got every ability to adjust our budgets and our rates. How could life be better?
So,
Well, I think, but Chris's
So-
point is valid, though.
No, we agree.
A 0.5% difference is easy to get people to agree to. A 5 or 6% change is not. So,
well,
so if we're talking, that 20% raise you said, that's a hard pill to swallow.
I don't think we'll have to go there, but I don't know.
I
And
would
it'd be nice if we had exact numbers, because we could predict it, couldn't we? I mean, we've got a pretty good
what's the
handle on it.
process?
I would support
The
this.
Finance Committee had proposed or at least recommended the one we talked about. Okay, we said 3, 5, 6, 6, 6, 6, and 90%. Do we take a vote on that amongst us as the first cut, and if we don't get approval on that, then we go to the next one?
I like the one that's on the board right now.
Which is what?
You've got it up there, 6, 6, 7, 7, 7.
You like that
So
one?
make a motion. That's
All right,
what
I
Wanna
make
make a motion?
So tonight,
What
what
we
you're
have to
doing
give
is
him
you're
some
providing
data.
some guidance to your
Yeah.
financial consultant, who next month is gonna come back to you when you will make a decision, because we will need to send out the
6, 6, 7, 7,
7.
7.
So it's good to get this
Well, we're
feedback,
really
it's
good
good to
at
do
setting
straw
figures.
polls, it's good to figure out where you're at,
I mean,
so that you can give
that's,
accurate guidance
And with all the
to your
un-
financial consultant, because he needs to prepare the report, because it's my recommendation that that report needs to be done by the time you send out that notice.
No, I agree.
because-
So,
Can I make a motion, or can I make a suggestion then, that we propose 6.5% for this year and
6.5.
So it's you're talking about a two-year rate increase, right?
yes, 2 years.
So when you say 6.5 for the year, are you saying
so
6.5
let's start
for
with
the
6
2
this
years?
year and 6.5 next year.
Or 6 and 7, and that's 6.5 for both years.
Oh.
what? I'm sorry. You bring up the bottom line, bring up this. I mean, this
That's
is,
90%.
Reserve target's
I'll get the
moved up,
100.
we're not gonna have a lot of action in the next year on capital and.
but it's still below the line.
Yeah, but
But the-
Yeah, but that is
the line's
now.
moved
But
up.
the blue line's
Make
9
it
million.
scenario 3, but change the 90 to
Yeah, so
95.
it's a
95?
new target.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, it's an additional.
yeah, make that 95.
Tanks.
No, I understand
Oh,
that,
sorry.
yeah, so that's-
It honestly isn't fuzzy.
So
No, no zero.
But by moving this line up, and
Point nine.
everything, we're
Point nine.
below the new line, so we're
Well,
above
that's
the
frustrating.
old line.
Yeah.
But in the one.
Oh, it's already a percentage.
I'm sorry?
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's good.
Way to use the existing.
No.
Here.
All right, let's keep it at,
And so it's 120.
Yeah.
And do you?
well, it
Oh,
depends.
just a second.
Yeah,
I'm not
Yeah, no, no.
oh, there we go,
Yeah,
perfect.
there we go.
So that's what I want to show in the
Well,
report.
that's what I'm wondering, is all of a sudden now it's, and all this,
Okay.
and we're still below
This
the
is a
line, so
compromise.
it's like, are we ever gonna get?
So can I summarize what we're gonna write in the report?
Sure, okay, all right, guys,
I just want to make sure because I don't want to write the report and then all of a sudden like, oh, what, we agreed to that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't know that. The report's gonna state that we're gonna increase revenues by 6.5%
I'll
for
pass
2
the
years.
picture.
Oh,
And then, 6%, no, I'm sorry, 6%, sorry. 6, then 6.5, then 7. And so the financial plan will be 5 years. It will have 2 years of adoptions and 3 years of projected. That's how we'll phrase it. And so the adopted will be a 6 and 6.5. And then what we're saying is that we're gonna anticipate that we'll only spend 95% of the CIP.
Who inserted that?
I did.
He did.
Oh,
didn't insert
who elected you?
And the reason why I'm suggesting that, that's why I just want to articulate, can we scroll down? The reason why is so that when you see the ending balances and the target, you meet your reserve target, you're above in 2025. If we do 90%, then we're very high above and it looks sort of interesting. Why do you don't really need that. If we do 100%, then you're way below and then it doesn't look really good. So this gives me a nice story I can articulate to people
I'm in.
and explain.
Yeah, I'm into,
I'm in.
yeah.
Jim, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. Well,
What does it?
we're
That's
just
enough.
hypothetical tonight.
Yeah,
right?
Ken, you okay with that?
I just think, I like round numbers, so I would never go to 6.5. I'd make 6, 6, and 7s, and then I'd be a happy guy.
What does
And I'm
6,
gonna
6,
be
and
happy
7?
either
What does
way.
6, 6 go?
Because all of these are gonna build what we're trying to build, which is reserves.
What's
and I'm
6,
in
6
favor
go?
of them.
Just, let's see.
There we go. Same thing, and it doesn't really change.
It goes up a little
So
each year.
6.5 just bite the bullet and still
All right, so
sticking
what?
to the 6.
6, 6, 7, 7, 7, 95%?
6.5, 6.5.
They already went 6.5, 3 of them. We're out of
Where?
luck.
Yeah,
Where?
I'm sorry? They voted
They
on
all
6
three
and a half?
agree on it.
I want 6.5.
yeah.
They're all in on it.
6.5,
That's
thank
over
you.
for us.
Okay.
All right, 6.5.
Yep.
Yeah,
All right, thank
President
you.
Can we
Shabby,
make- can we
count
make
to
it
3,
90?
you too could be
Can we
president.
make it 97%, Sanjay?
This the last one?
97 and a half. Can we get to,
We're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you being patient with us.
we're done.
Okay, moving on.
We got that.
Yeah, Postman closes in about 40 minutes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm watching mine all the time, I don't know about you.
PowerPoint presentation, so we know the schedule.
Oh,
I got a friend that's supposed to hop on a plane next week and go to Australia.
So,
yeah.
okay, so schedule.
Yes.
So we are today,
sorry.
No debt. Okay.
there we go.
Missed it, sorry.
Okay, there we go. So we've been had a pretty aggressive schedule here, and we are on March 10th. So this is the board workshop. We're gonna write the report. That's gonna be in the board packet on 4/14. The board would hopefully proceed with the Prop 218 notice, issue that, and then we'll have the public hearing on June 9th. So I'm hoping everyone has that in their calendar and will be here. It'd be nice. I had a public hearing yesterday and we almost did not have a quorum. So, and then the rates will be effective July 1st. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Thanks, bye. Okay,
Okay.
computer services, looks like, huh?
I think we're on.
Did we? No, we're in D. We just did the timeline. Is that right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, we actually have a different timeline and different budgets, but we've already, in terms of the actual budgets, these represent what we had last month. I did add a year 2 budget, which is consistent with what Sanjay Gar is using in the model. And then the CIP is the same as, last month. So I don't really have a lot to say unless there's questions.
Nope.
The next one on the timeline, basically the same. We're trying to schedule, we want to have a finance committee and a facilities committee meeting later this month. Before the next board meeting. So we'll be working on dates for that. So now we can go to D.
Okay, so now we can go to D, is that
Yes.
right? Okay, thank you.
Evening. What I have before you is the, looking for approval for implementation of a computerized maintenance management system.
More about that later.
And there's 4 parts to it. Bear with all the detail. Number 1 is a professional service agreement with Miller Spatial Services for $106,000 and $500. And what he's going to be doing is taking our CalCAD system, which is a CAD-based map, and importing it into a geodatabase for the asset management system to reside basically on top of. And there's also some custom reporting in there. And I'll go into more detail after I get through this 2 through 4. 3-year license agreement with Azteca Systems, that's CityWorks. That is the asset management, computer management system software. And then the 3-year license for ESRI, Environmental Systems Research Institute, and that is the GIS software. And in order for all this software to work, we're going to need to upgrade our server to a pretty high-powered server and add some SQL seats. I talked to Irvine. For Tyler, we're going to be replacing that server anyways. It's just going to have a little more horsepower to run the GIS software. So we don't really have a great tracking for what we do with our assets. One of the first steps in asset management is knowing where your stuff is, what condition it's in, and what we're doing about it, and how we're expending material, labors, and equipment. So, for example, if somebody asked me, when did we put in pump 3 at Crystal Springs, it's a lot of digging through paper and not terribly efficient. And we could do much better in generating data and trends. So, the reason we're proposing this is, 1, for efficiency, and more for better managing our assets and preserving the value of our assets. This will The CityWorks software I used when I was in Marina, it's fantastic. They've got a great reputation. They're not some small software company. They do cities as large as Houston, New York City, very large agencies. I don't think it's overkill for us. It's very customizable. And I think the GIS software is going to be very important because it engages staff in the mapping and correcting the mapping, and it also allows us to share information with other agencies, regulatory and consultants and whatnot. The CityWorks software, like I said, is built on the Esri platform. It's geocentric. And another nice aspect of it is if someone wants to look for records for Crystal Springs, they don't have to figure out where in the file structure it is on the server. They can go to the map and click on it and get drilled down to all the
So
data.
you're kind of answering my question, I think. We're going to enter historical data in there also.
We can do that. We can do that. We're going to have.
Or we're just going to start fresh moving forward.
Well, I wouldn't, not down to the oil change, but yes, historical data of how old's pump one, how old's the motor, when did it get replaced? We have logbooks, and if
So
we
yeah,
think.
those logbooks will be digitized or.
Yeah, we're gonna take extract the important information out of it. Sometimes we're looking through logbooks and we're like, oh, that was 2017, and then we've gotta look through 300 pages of a logbook. So this is really gonna help us with that. As part of the implementation of CityWorks, we're also gonna implement the Esri software, and that's gonna replace the CalCAD system. The CalCAD system we've had is very useful. It served the district well, but we've kind of come to the end of its usefulness for us. We're going to preserve that database and run these parallel for a little bit to make sure staff is comfortable with what reports they're looking for out of the system, and make sure before we completely switch over to the GIS that it serves all the needs plus of the district. On the front page, there's a pricing matrix of what this is going to cost. Miller Spatial, who is a GIS consultant and also very well regarded in implementing CityWorks, was recommended by Esri. He's got a great reputation. I've met him at conferences and whatnot. And I also talked to CityWorks about doing the training and some of the implementation for the software. And they looked at what Bruce Miller's price was, and they pretty much said that they or others can't even approach that. So we're getting really good economy of scale there. The Azteca licensing, CityWorks, you'll note on year 1 and 2, we're paying $15,000 negotiated discount for the first couple of years to secure the deal, and then year 3 will go to the full price of $21,000 for the software per year.
And then thereafter, it
It's going to
continues.
continue at that.
At
This
21?
is an ongoing 21 then
Yes.
for
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Unless we have a price increase, 7 or 8%.
So, and then, okay, never mind, it's not.
And then Esri, I tried to get a discount out of them, and they're kind of like Microsoft. There's no discounts to be had there.
So is Miller essentially the general contractor?
Essentially,
I'm just trying
he's
to.
going to be
understand
putting it all
structure.
together for us.
He's putting it all together. I mean, we're going to pay these people directly, but he's going to be watching Esri and Azteca. But Irvine is already our vendor, so he'll be also working hand in hand with.
Yes, we're going to
Irvine,
order the
right?
server and the SQL, and they'll be installing that and working with Miller Spatial.
And
on
Esri
this.
tends, not Esri, I'm sorry, Miller is really labor intensive. Theirs is a labor cost. I mean, it's all of these functions that they do to install and.
Yeah, converting the CAD to a geodatabase
Yeah,
is pretty
that's a
heavy lift as well.
labor-based thing for them. That's not software-based for them.
Right,
I'm just
right.
trying.
It's all professional services.
A professional
Correct.
service, that's the word I was thinking.
You're
of.
correct.
Right.
Is there any training included in the proposal for people to learn the GIS system? Because that's not just the most user-friendly system
Right.
on the planet, is it?
Right. Miller Spatial will mostly be doing training of staff of how to use CityWorks, but in terms of maintaining the Esri software, I'm pretty well versed in doing the edits, and we're going to also engage a couple other staff members to take on some of those tasks. I wouldn't propose that staff takes a development and take all the CAD and import that. That's kind of a heavy lift. We'd probably look to Miller Spatial for that type of service. But, minor edits, changing attributes on a pipeline, where a hydrant is, where a meter is, adding a meter is not really that difficult. You just got to do it with the right process. You don't want to edit into the database. You want to check out a version, edit it, and get it approved to go back in. So there's a lot of QA/QC involved.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, is that, getting people familiar with it and so they can use it comfortably and not cause issues in
Yeah,
in
and
working with
that's a
it.
good point. So for example, the customer service staff will still be using Tyler. The way I envision it, and this will be part of the planning process with Mary and other staff, is if a customer call for a meter or a customer-related account comes into the front office, they'll generate a service request or a service order in Tyler, and it will fire over into CityWorks. And then we will go and look at it, like let's say someone says this hydrant's leaking, and we go out and realize that someone had just opened it and we don't have any work to do. Then we would close it out and not elevate it to a work order. But if we're gonna roll out Monster Truck and start doing some work, that's when we elevate it to a work order and record the labor, material, and equipment that's necessary for that. We can track proactive versus reactive maintenance, we can track how many valves we exercise, and basically data-driven decisions on what we're doing with our staff and equipment.
Oh, cool.
That's what I'm really after.
Yeah, cool.
Do you have a question? Yeah.
I take it from your comments and the way you're proposing is that have experience with the system in the past.
Yes, when I was in Marina, we did CityWorks for 10 years, and it was a fantastic
So you're
product,
quite
so-
familiar with this
Very.
application,
Which is nice.
which is nice. What I'm trying to say
Saves us
is,
all.
the reason that's here on the table is because you have had in your career
Yes.
a good deal of experience and use and understand how it applies to our needs and why it would be a good thing for us to have because of what you've seen it do in the past. I'm just, I didn't get that at the beginning, but now I see why this is on the table.
And I've seen
Okay,
other
that's
districts
fine.
with other products that aren't quite up to snuff.
And
of
that's what sold
CityWorks
me
had.
at the facilities level was.
Okay, I see,
yeah,
you
him
knew that.
having
I didn't- I-
Test driven it
that's
on
what I was
Marina's
getting at.
dime,
Yeah, sure.
And he has confidence that it'll work
Okay,
here.
that's
That
good.
really,
No
really
problem.
helped hearing that.
No, I'm just trying to get that out on the table because we're not going into this with no background in it. He's gonna be able to handle this pretty quickly and get it up and running.
And when we did the
Sure, that's
implementation
fine.
with Marina, we hired CityWorks to do the training and some of that setup, and then we had the consultant do the integration. And after it was done, I was like, I should have had the consultant just do everything. The CityWorks staff was great,
All right, I'll take
but I
your
think
word.
it was easier just, it would have been better if we just had one point.
We're not
person.
going in cold. I mean, that's obvious, so that's good.
If I may say so, on the Esri side, which is the mapping software, that's now pretty much the standard of all, of cities and public agencies and a lot of, engineering firms. So it'll allow us to be able to communicate better with, or more effectively with other agencies as well.
Okay.
And another benefit is it gets field staff looking at the maps a little closer. In Marina, we had people saying, well, how come the hydrant's on the wrong side of the street? It was great. We were constantly cleaning up our maps and getting them more accurate. And I think that was, missing pipelines, added pipelines that don't exist. And you could really clean that up every day you're at work. So we're looking for approval for these 4 items. Patrick, do I need to read those out, or can I leave that to the president?
The staff report's pretty clear, so I
Okay.
think you can move the staff recommendation if one of the directors wanted to do that.
I can make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the general manager to execute a professional service agreement with Miller Spatial Services for implementing the CityWorks software and Esri software not to exceed. Do I need to read each one, or?
You don't have, you can say I would make a motion to approve the staff recommendation as outlined in the staff report.
What he said.
That's fine.
And I'll second what he said.
You know?
Thank you. Please.
Yes, Director Laundrie?
Yes.
Vice President
Yes.
Reynolds? Director Coverdale?
Yes.
Director Feldman?
Yes on what he said.
President Michelson?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, I look forward to the efficiency
Yeah, no.
of information.
Hey,
flow.
Monster Truck, I won't be able to stop Monster Truck after you get this installed.
Well, don't you know that Monster Truck will receive the work
Yeah, isn't there gonna be a
orders?
widescreen TV in
It's
Monster Truck?
robotic,
No, good.
No, that's illegal.
You can't be watching.
unless you're driving a Tesla.
But with this, we'll be able to run virtual reality, right? So you don't actually have to run Monster Truck, you can just fix it on the virtual reality and we don't have to worry about the leak in the street.
Yeah, we could do some training like that.
There we go.
Fine.
So,
Stop the
All
water.
righty.
Yeah, Don't apply that to your airplane, all right?
So,
I didn't do-
7A, have you all seen 7A?
Wait, yeah,
was
7A,
missing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we, so
That's
Patrick
good news.
received
John
last
thanks
week
Funniest thing.
an invoice from Schenkman for $29,656.85.
I
But
don't
we knew
pay
that
the
was
85
coming,
cents.
right?
Yeah, we knew it was coming.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, we've talked about
No,
it.
but it's just, now we're really feeling that pain.
Yep.
Do you think there'd be any issue if we didn't pay them the 85 cents?
Yeah.
Because I would just kind of like to
Probably
do
take
that
us
just
the
for
Can you
Probably
fun.
give us an actual hourly breakdown?
So we did.
Oh, okay.
did.
So,
You have all the
What's his
so
We
hourly
just
rate?
backed into it.
What's his rate?
So we got this, and Kim Manoli is my law partner, looked at it because one of the things we thought is we knew where this was coming, and we wanted to look at it pretty closely. So he sent a letter, and he did include an invoice, and it includes a number of entries that totaled 26 hours for legal time at $725 an hour. Wow. So that total is $18,850.
And he gave you the detail.
And then there's a demographer fee, because you can see from this invoice that they did some analysis before they sent the letter. And the demographer fee is $10,800.
Yeah, for that.
And then there's certified mail, which is how he served us the letter, which is where you get the $6.85. So Kim and I looked at this and we said, is this unreasonable and can we challenge this? And the answer is probably not. The hours we might think the hours are a little high. You might think the rate is a little high. We might think the demographer is a little high.
But we would spend more money challenging.
But they're all within kind of the ballpark
Took us
of reasonableness.
To task
was
with
our
the certified mail cost. I really don't know.
I move we send a check and.
Well,
conclusion. No action.
No
is
action.
required. I mean, this is now.
He's just reporting
Well,
it.
that's within your spending authority anyway, isn't it?
No. Yes, but it's,
He pays.
Oh.
It's not an action item. It's on
Not
your
an
general
action
manager
item.
board, so this would be on the claims, I assume, next
Right,
month.
yeah.
But we
So I
wanted to
would
let
go-
you
we would go
know.
Great
Okay.
idea.
that
Let's
this was
cut
here.
the check and tell him that he can come and pick it up, and it's here, but we're not paying the postage. So he can come and pick it up, it's ready at the
certified
front
mail is-
office, these are our business hours, come and get it, Sparky.
And Kim and I, we anticipated this reaction from the board. And,
I'm stunned to hear
and so we talked about and we coordinated with your general manager on this, is what could we do if the board wanted to push on this? And the question is whether you think it's worth the time. So we could follow up with Kevin Shankman, because one of the things that he did include this invoice. One of the things that wasn't included in here is the days that he actually did the work. It's 4 entries with these hours. And he also didn't include, and I know this from our invoice, we always have the day and we always have the attorney and their rate. He doesn't have the attorney. I'm assuming it's all Kevin Shankman at $725.
You mean the name?
The name of the attorney.
Or the
like
level
it's
of the
his-
attorney.
The firm is Shankman and Hughes, so we assume there's more attorneys there. So, I mean, we could ask for a little bit more detail. Those would be 2 things that would jump out to me to ask for. It's gonna take our time to
Yeah,
contact
it's a
him
no-
and
it's a
do
no
this.
win, no win.
And if we thought it was worth doing, we would tell you that. Like, if we saw, something ridiculous here, we would point it out, but it's not.
No,
it's
we
within the
knew
realm of-
we knew
I'd
going
say
in what it
write
was
the
gonna be,
check
and it is.
and staple it to the wall, and he can come peel it off the wall.
No, he's
Charges
charged us
for-
for the certified mail to get it to them.
Yeah,
So, but
That was the
no cost for us
process
to
of
send it.
serving the letter.
Serving the letter, so it's already paid.
no, that was the serving. What I'm saying is I was too cheap to pay the postage to mail the check to
Oh,
him.
no.
All right, let's,
He mails it to him, it's fine.
All right, so now we have James.
James, you're back.
Wow, it seems like he never left.
Okay. What was that?
Been a busy month, as usual. We installed a couple of hydrants, or a hydrant at Redondo Beach Road, had a main break at Sonora, and then we had another one at Garcia. Luckily, before we paved, it started surfacing water again. We dug it up, found some other clamps in a little hole, so we replaced a couple of sticks of pipe in there. So it was nice and tight and dry by the time we left and got it paved. So I'm really glad it didn't start leaking after paving, because paving's not cheap. So I see that as a is a good thing. And we're going to reevaluate Garcia to see if we need to do a pipeline project there. We're not sure if it was just a couple of sticks that are bad. We installed the new PAX mixer at EG3. Staff's working on modifying how we dose that tank with chlorine, and we're going to do that internally. Treatment staff replaced a 4-inch wash water recovery valve at Nunez in-house. And the treatment staff did a great job this month of running Nunez water treatment on Pilarcitos well water only with Denison online as much as possible. We did have to start running off of Crystal Springs a little bit. And we used all the sources. We just used a little bit of Crystal Springs this water due to, it was a power outage, wasn't it, Sean? Did we have to catch up with Crystal Springs? Yeah. It was just a couple-day power outage at Denison, just to catch up. The new SCADA project is, we went live today. It was pretty trying on staff. New software is always challenging, but so far so good after a lot of effort on Sean's part, getting Irvine and Calcon towards the same goal. Stone Dam Pipeline project is almost done. All they have to do is pressure test it. And we did a flow test on that pipeline, and I think we were looking at 1,500 to 1,750. We did 2,000 gallons a minute, no problem.
Good.
So it's exceeded our expectations. We might even be able to do 2,200.
Great.
But we want to finish with the pressure test and get Andrini done, and then we can do a water order for a higher flow rate later on. So that's been a big success, and the Andrini brothers have done a great job on that project as well. We still have to wire up the mag meter at the bottom of the hill. Once we have that wired up, we're going to have a meter testing company come out, and we're going to test that and compare it to the turbine meter at the top, and just see how close they correlate, and essentially do a meter test on both of those at
Yeah,
the
but
same
that's
time.
confidential, so the meter under, if the PUC meter under reads, we won't tell them.
It's funny, they've already asked for reads off of our meter. Yeah, it was on the plans. I tried to hide it, but I said, don't worry about it, that's nothing. Casa Del Mar PRV project is complete. Stolowski did a great job. I think the total change orders was about 26,000 on that, so we had for a $560,000 project, that's pretty good. He was very fair with us. EKI is continuing to make progress on Grandview and Pine Willow Oak. We met with EKI to also look at the preliminary design report for the Pilarcitos Creek crossing. Looks pretty good. We're going to be hiring someone to put a sonde in the siphon that goes across. There's a wastewater siphon that goes from Oak Park over to Safeway. It's a parallel line. The design shows us 15 feet underneath it, but we're going to put a sonde in there and get some good depth elevations for making sure we're nowhere near close to that. And then before the project starts, we're going to have the contractor camera that before and after so that we don't get pinned with any liabilities relating to the sonde, or excuse me, the siphon getting damaged by the horizontal directional drilling. Denison Tank Road Culvert Replacement Project. Pre-bid meeting is going to be on the 20th of this month, and the bids will be due at the end of the month, or the beginning of April. That's moving right along. Denison Generators, I have sent the second resubmittal to Cummins. They're just missing a couple of items. TJC's been great at catching things that I don't think I would have noticed in the submittals. So once that comes back, hopefully I'll have my authority to construct from the Air Board. I'm asking them weekly where we're at, and we are in the process, and they have everything they need. So I think we're very close. For some reason, they don't want to tell me when that's going to happen, because there's probably a lot of people bugging them about generators right now.
And that's a 3-month lead time, so we're really hoping that we can get this done before middle of summer, so we're ready for the next PSPS.
The next round.
We will, and the Pilarcitos pipeline is really going to help us out this season. We're not going to totally rely on it, because things can happen with Pilarcitos Lake, but that's going to really make things much easier for us as well. And then we did the HDR kickoff with the Nunez filter improvements and the clear well coating with the HDR folks. Sean and Todd were there. I think it was a big success. We're really liking their approach and their ability to listen to what we're looking for. And they're also going to be looking at value engineering certain aspects so that we're getting the best price for the product.
Perfect.
If you have any questions, I'm here.
Excellent. James, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
I want to go home.
I'll ask you after the meeting. GIS, how far along, do we have GIS locations on all our meters, or just on every single house meter?
Probably short on about 200,
200, yeah.
but we're close.
Okay, we do, okay, so, all right.
Those are GPS, the meters and the hydrants.
Okay, so the residential, service meters are, okay, because guys, I see something else coming up in director comments, and it'll fit in that, thank you. Kathleen, please.
I'll be quick.
Go.
So my report is on the precipitation observations. And
You can go home
so
now.
even during the rate discussion, drought came up. But the reason I thought it was notable was we had another record for the Hetch Hetchy water system, the driest February on record. So that made San Francisco take note, and it was communicated with the Bosca members, that this was a significant event. But hopefully, everyone's hoping that these storms become more productive and continue through March and hopefully into a little bit of April, so that we can kind of catch up. But we're, right now, between the Hetch Hetchy system and the regional system, we're about 50% normal for precipitation. But the good news is, even if we don't get the rain or the snowpack in Hetch Hetchy, San Francisco is predicting that we will fill the Hetch Hetchy reservoir. So, so that's some good news. But there's more and more pressure on the water, and so getting behind is never a good thing. So we'll hope for rain.
Yeah, it's supposed to be some tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Item 8, director agenda items, requests for future board meetings. Am I hearing nothing once, twice? Gone. Thank you.
Just a heads up, I won't be here on the April
What?
meeting. I always have a conflict on April, so Catherine Groves is here always in April, and so she will be here in April.
Okay.
Oh, that's when we get to try and get her to sing the national anthem.
I'll leave it to the board.
Yeah, you guys apparently didn't take your training courses.
Thanks.
That would be adjournment then. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to say it was a record, but it wasn't.
Considering we
We had a heavy
Beat a
lift.
dead horse.
noodled the rate structure, I think we did okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, gentlemen, have a great night.
Thank you.
Hiya!